Our topic this morning is the greatest good of all. And I actually came up with this talk title last night. And with all the events that have transpired this past week and weeks and months, and then also, when you think about it, really years, it can seem like it's just all too much. And so I give you an upfront warning that I intend to be centered and in spiritual truth, but I am also human and things happen. And in that humanness, I find sometimes that I might not be able to respond with freedom of choice. I might react. So that's okay. We love ourselves and we move forward. Way back in that great scriptural book, the Bible, there were at the beginning of it two different creation stories. And the first one is God said there will be light, and then there was light, and God saw the light and said, it is good. Very simple explanation of the law of creation. We say, let there be. The law of creation makes it so, and we look at it and say, it is good. And then there's that second story of creation about Adam and Eve. And it's important that it's there because it's telling us that even though the spiritual principle of creating experiences is first cause, it is primary, then we have the human expression of it and the relationship of it. And ourselves in relating in this world. It is the first story of relationship in this human realm. And so in this story, we are taught that there was a very important lesson that we had to learn in the Garden of Eden. And that was that we had the freedom to choose. When I think about our topic, the highest and greatest good of all, I thought that there really could be two different ways that we experience the highest and greatest good of all. We could still be in the Garden of Eden, and lots of people want to go back to it, where everything was beautiful, where everyone just loved and shared and walked with the animals and ate delicious fruit here and there. And yet, what we need to realize about that experience of the highest and greatest good of all is that we did not make any choice about it. It was given to us, and we lived and accepted it in innocence and ignorance. We did not know that we had the gift, the ability to say no. And so we were guided to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And as soon as we did, our eyes were open, and we were no longer innocent and ignorant only, but we also now were responsible. And this highest and greatest good of all that could be experienced the second way requires all to fully know the pain and the consequences and the problems of making a wrong choice, and realizing that one can choose yes or no to that good. And in doing that, to still choose the all good. And so both the Buddha teaching and the whole Old Testament is lesson after lesson teaching us the law of cause and effect, that we are free to choose, and we always pay the consequences of those choices. In 1993, there was a Parliament of World Religions. And in the Science of Mind magazine, Reverend William Curtis wrote something up about that. He said in 1993, more than 200 religious leaders representing over 100 of the world's religions. The Parliament of World Religions these days numbers thousands of attendees. So that's really grown, and it's amazing. And they met in Chicago in order to explore common ground. And they came up with a statement that everyone present could agree to. They said, "We take individual responsibility for all we do. All our decisions, actions, and failures to act have consequences." They agreed with that. They agreed with that in full awareness and discussion that religion, or the excuse of religion, has caused tremendous pain and anguish throughout the ages. So with full awareness of the mistakes that have been made in religion's name, this group, which included Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, Sikhism, 100 religions all, agreed that their actions have consequences and that they must take responsibility for all we do. They came up with another statement, which is common to these religions that I mentioned. What you do not wish done to yourself, do not do to others. What you wish done to yourself, do to others. The golden rule. And so there is agreement in the highest and greatest good of all, that we have freedom of choice and we have the responsibility for the choices we make, and we must experience the full consequences of those choices. And for some direction in what sort of choice to make in any particular moment, do not do to others what you do not want done to yourself. Plain and simple. It can be applied to any situation that you are in. And we have to be very clear about what that means, because to make a decision with that thought, do to this person what I would desire this person to do to me, it's an individual choice. And yet, I think if we were to gather everyone and ask everyone, what is it that you would choose? We would all choose the same. Good, respect, honor, to be listened to be heard, to be loved, to be accepted. We would all choose kindness. I know as I listen to my stories and other stories, we've got our reasons and our excuses why that other person should have treated us better than what they did. And what we want to realize is that this is what's common to all. It's inbuilt in us, this desire to experience personal good. And if we could connect with that moment when we first discovered that we could hurt or harm someone else, we would realize that at that moment, we didn't want to. It hurt us when we discover we have hurt another. And this brings us to another spiritual principle. We are one. We are one. In essence and nature and substance, we are one expression of life, of this universe. We are one. And so the belief that we are separated, and the belief that God separates its love and its goodness and its joys and its freedoms amongst people so that some have more and some have less, all of that belief is a belief in separation. And what we want to do as spiritual practicers is to remember that no, 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 we are one. And so the highest and greatest good of all includes our personal good, and it includes the good of everyone else. The past few weeks, months that we've been meeting live virtually, we have talked about making miracles. And what I have hoped to emphasize over and over is that there are two conditions that must be met before you can do your spiritual practice for that miracle. And the first one is that it be life affirming, something that will increase the experience of life, love, freedom, joy, harmony, peace, beauty, order, goodness. If you've got that, then the second criteria is critical. And it is because we are one. It is because of the golden rule. It is because that we cannot wish for ourselves some good that we do not wish for all. In other words, our desire for personal good cannot take away the freedom of choice or hurt, take away the freedom of choice of anyone else, or hurt or harm anyone else. That's not the way life is. It's the way human beings are. So let's talk about human beings, of which I am one. Adam and Eve, right? They made their choice. They ate the apple. We want to know the knowledge of good and evil. Boom. No longer the Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden didn't go anywhere. And getting kicked out of it is a metaphor, as in they couldn't see it anymore because they were too aware of other choices. And they became aware of, oh, I'm bad, I'm ashamed, I could do bad. But then their offspring discovered the full consequences of believing in separation. Cain and Abel hurt each other. And that is deep in the core foundation belief of the human race consciousness. That belief that we can hurt each other causes us to hurt each other over and over and over again. And it doesn't get any better when it happens. And it always hurts more than those involved when it happens, because we are one. My teacher, Dr. Stuart Grayson, used to call the human race consciousness mass mind group think, the mob mentality. And I had the joy of watching the rebroadcast of Jesus Christ Superstar on PBS. I think it was Friday night. And I guess I had never watched it so attentively before, or maybe it was the actor Brandon Victor Dixon, who played Judas, who really struck home with me that he really was frightened to death of the mob that had surrounded Jesus. And he was afraid that the mob was going to get out of control. Well, he believed it was out of control, and that it would bring hurt and harm to this beautiful teaching. And so he tried to stop it. Well, we know how that story went. And we see that played out over and over, and right now in our world today. But yet there's something about it that we need to realize is important. It's not that there's something wrong with mass mind group think. What we need to realize is that mass mind group think, or the human race consciousness, is built of individuals who are making choices. And so somehow, in some way, each one of us is contributing to what the human race believes. And as each one of us does our spiritual work to release our fears and our beliefs in hurt and harm, and to do that forgiveness work, to forgive ourselves when we have done hurt and harm, and others when we have done hurt and harm, that we are like that drip, drip, drip of pure water into a muddy pond. We are purifying or influencing the human race consciousness to believe in the good, the beautiful, and the true. And in the meantime, look, we're not there. We're not there. We want to be there, but we're not there. And so each one of us wants to take individual responsibility and be free of the mass mind group think. And we can be free as we do our spiritual practices and free ourselves of the belief in terror, in rage, in no good, in bad, in evil. As we do that inner spiritual work, we are adding our powerful and empowering influence or vote into the human race consciousness. And certainly we can, over the past century, since Buddha, we can see the impact that an individual has made in the human race consciousness. And I am here today and having as good a life as I have because of those individuals, thank God, who have made wise, strong choices of spiritual truth and stood upon them with integrity in every one of their decisions. And so these people who have gone before me and you, that we admire, are our examples. And for each one of us, there is, again from last week, that inner wisdom guiding us in making those choices that are in integrity with our values, our beliefs, our spiritual truths that we profess. We are one, and we have individual choice, and we can choose to know we are one or not. And so that's what stands before us. I'm looking at what's going on in the world right now, and I am reminded of almost 20 years ago, we had our 9/11 wake-up call, and it definitely showed us, once again, we are one, and that what happens on the other side of the world, wherever you want to point it, can happen to us because it's in the human race consciousness, and the human race is everywhere. And at that time, I happened, a couple of years earlier, begun doing a lot of spiritual work within myself to release my belief in terror. It came into my world in a very personal way in the form of, my two cats fighting, but it was a very real experience of terror in my home. And the only way I knew to get out of it was spiritual practice. Although at the same time, I was doing everything on the human level to patch up and repair and fix what was going on in my home. But no matter what I did in the outer, I knew I had to deal with my own beliefs. And I believed, yes, in hurt and harm, but terror, I believed in it. And so I did all this spiritual work. And when 9/11 happened, after the shock and the horror and the, what can I do in the immediate moment? One of the things that I noticed was that I did have a freedom of terror, that it was not running me and my choices. Other beliefs were, that's for sure, but not that particular element, that element of terror that before I had done that spiritual work, it would paralyze me. and make me incapable of making any choice, any decision, any movement at all. So spiritual work works. It changes our consciousness and sets us free to be able to make a free choice to respond instead of react, given what's given. And there is always a response to be made. As we human beings continue to believe that we can hurt and harm each other, we humans have a response to make to that. And that response is the consequences that we set up. And we are obeying that divine law of cause and effect, that there is a consequence for every choice, that spiritual law that brings to each one of us the full consequences of our choices. But as human beings in our Adam and Eve expression of the relative world, it is up to each one of us to remind each other that we are one and that there are consequences. And you get a timeout. I love that training with the children. Now you just go sit here and you just think about it. This is your consequence. It's much easier to get, some sort of punishment where you can't have this and you can rail and argue against the punishment, whatever. But no, a consequence is, this is what you did, and this is the consequence. And as divine beings loving each other, we can, I don't like this, we hold each other accountable. I don't like it. I don't want to be held accountable. I hold myself accountable. I don't like to be held accountable. But over the course of my lifetimes, there have been a few times that I know I behaved badly, and the person that I hurt or harmed let me know it. They responded intelligently and wisely and clearly and directly. And they said to me, you did this. This is how I felt. I don't like it. Here are the consequences. And sometimes those consequences were, I remove myself from you. Goodbye. And yet, as I was held accountable, I was ashamed. It hurt. It was horrible. And I agreed. And I learned. And I changed. Do unto others what you want done to you. And because I didn't like the consequences, it caused me to think about what I was doing and to go deeper into my ignorance and innocence, my cluelessness. I didn't know I was hurting other people. I was just being myself, whatever. But no, I had hurt people and I needed to think about it. I needed to bring an awareness to what I was doing. So I had to eat of the knowledge of good and evil. And when I did and realized what I did, I had to forgive myself. And with the other person, if available to me, I had to make amends. Sometimes the consequences didn't allow me that option. But where those consequences did allow it, I had to make amends. I had to say, I'm sorry. And I had to fix it. I had to fix it. And so we human beings, we are in this together. As I've experienced this more and more, and I know you're going to hold me accountable, I'm going to hate it, but oh well. So the thing is that with love, with unconditional love, in the human expression of relationships, we speak our truth to each other wisely, lovingly, clearly, and directly, and follow through on the consequences. That's what love in human behavior, given that the human race believes in hurt and harm, that is that step forward that we all want to learn how to take both ways. And giving it lovingly, we want to get better and better at giving it lovingly and receiving it lovingly. And it's all, personally, it's awful, but every one of us, I know, because we are human and because we do step on each other's toes and bump into each other and have done worse. I'm not going to address what specific people have done in the world, but what I do know is that we are one, and that as I look upon what other individuals are making as choices, I can look within myself and ask myself, what am I doing as far as my choices? What do I need to become aware of? What do I need to eat that apple of the knowledge of good and evil in me? And what do I need to do spiritual work about? And where have I caused hurt or harm that I need to correct and that I need to address and that I need to change? It's much better, personally, I think, to take a lesson from someone else's experience rather than being the direct recipient of being held accountable for your own behavior. But again, in love, we are one. We are human. We all make bad choices. And we all absolutely are in this together, learning how to make better and better choices and supporting each other in learning what we need to learn. And so as we do this together, one of the wonderful things that I have seen happening in the human race, particularly with groups of people coming together, is that we have learned how to heal together. And we are learning how to get along better together, speaking our truth, truly listening with an open heart, hearing what we need to hear, asking for forgiveness, and doing the work spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, relationally, to learn how to change. And then to change, we have to change. We have to change. And every once in a while in this world, we humans experience the full consequences of the human race consciousness. And we all share in it, and we all have a responsibility for what we have contributed to it. But having done that, we need to make individual decisions about what is ours to do. And if some of the things that happen cause you to react emotionally, and you know, warning, warning, I'm not in spiritual principle right now, then you know you have spiritual work to do. And that even a little droplet of spiritual practice will set you free enough to make a better choice in your response. And each and every one of us needs to do that work. And by doing it, yes, we all travel together now. We're not in the innocence and ignorance of the Garden of Eden. We have been learning for centuries all the mistakes that the human race can make. And one of the things I choose to interpret in the Old Testament is the Abraham story. I mean, this and Sarah, I mean, the two of them made the same mistake over and over and over again. And before they got it, and I don't know if they ever did, but they just kept making that same old mistake, and it would have its consequences, and it would be a big old mess. And then Abraham would go to God, God, I'm sorry, whatever. And God was like, knucklehead, you did it again. And you are loved, you are blessed, and go and sin no more. So as long as we continue to live with the human race belief in hurt and harm, we can expect to have quite a lot of lessons to learn. But what we each want to do is make the most of every single lesson, every single minor experience of, oh my gosh, I just slammed the door in so-and-so's face. Oh my gosh, I couldn't look that one person in the eye. In looking at every slight evidence that we believe in hurt and harm and doing that spiritual practice to release us from that belief, we do, first of all, improve our personal worlds, but oh yeah, we are one. And so somehow we are improving the entire human race. So those are my thoughts about what's going on. I hope I stayed in spiritual integrity with this lesson. And let me turn to spiritual mind treatment or affirmative prayer to close. And so join with me right now as I speak this word for each one listening wherever you are. And I do call into consciousness our beloved George Floyd and each and every one concerned, involved. And if there is anyone else you would like, or any situation on the planet that you would like include, just think of that name, that place, that situation, and know that this word is also for them. There is only God, and God is pure, wholesome, loving goodness. God is the all good, that one presence, that I am, that divine creator that knows I am light, and upon seeing that light, knows only it is good. This pure consciousness of divine that knows only good. Call it God, call it the all good. This is first cause. This is primary. This is omnipresent. And it is present even though the human race may have a belief in separation and to the contrary, separating that which is the all good into the good and the bad. And so this word right now, recognizing the all good, the I am that I am as being omnipresent, now erases all belief in hurt, harm, separation, and all the emotions of terror, anger, rage, fear, and all of that which flows from it, all actions, choices, behaviors that provide evidence to the contrary of the all good. Each one is now set free by the presence of love. Divine love is the power to change all things into an expression of the all good, which is present. And so I know that each one has that divine goodness within them, and that each one is this pure goodness through and through, and that this goodness is guiding each one and setting each one free of all beliefs to the contrary. And as a result, each one is freer and lighter and better able to experience the power of unconditional love and to be guided by that unconditional love in moving into their world of relationships and guiding each one to make those choices that they are proud to have made, and to make those choices with other people that are those choices that they wish the other people would make with regard to them. And to be authentic and clear, and express with love and wisdom what needs to be expressed to other people in their world, so that each one in each one's world is awakening to a greater awareness of the all good and of all those thoughts, beliefs, and choices that do not represent that all good. And so right now, each one knows that this presence of love is right here and right now. And this presence of love is guiding each one right here and right now. And each one is enough. Each one is the full power of making a fresh new choice of love and wisdom, and is well satisfied with this enlightened choice, so that each one is now able to move out into the human race and express their heart and their truth with perfect equanimity, and to allow their truth to be heard and to be responded to with dignity and with honor. And so each one is able to be a powerful, authentic leader in their world, respected, honored, appreciated, valued, and enjoyed. And each one is able to go forth and do the same to each and every other person in their world. And because of this truth, and because of the acceptance of this truth by each one, this human race consciousness is changed for the better. And so right now in the human race, in the world of events and situations, this improved consciousness in believing in the all good is moving the human race in some mysterious way from good to greater good, in belief, in acceptance, in embodiment, and in awareness of how this human race interacts with each other. Each one is grateful to have contributed a powerful, loving, and healing consciousness to this world. And each one now goes forth inspired and empowered and better able to participate in co-creating the events in the future for this world and humanity that are happier, healthier, more harmonious, peaceful, and loving, more joyous, more like that Garden of Eden than ever before. I am grateful that it is the power of love that is taking this word and making it so through its loving law. And because I know it is this law, it is this God, the cause, the creator of all that is doing it, I know that it can be done. And as I let it go, it is done. And so it is. And so that is the way it is. May you have a happier and freer and more harmonious week than ever before. And it looks like we may still be virtual next Sunday, but we shall see. Stay posted. We will definitely be virtual. We don't yet know yet whether we'll also be able to be physically meeting yet or not. So we'll see about that. Things are happening. All right. Goodbye. Have a great week.